for information. The board made a decision last week, and tonight is about explaining the instructional programs that are going to be offered in our schools this school year. And it's going to be about your decision where your family feels like you need to fall within those instructional plans. So just briefly, I am going to say, if you're leaning towards you want your children back in school this year at some point, then you probably will be more interested in looking at that in-person continuum, which they're going to refer to as option 1. If you are really leaning towards health and safety, and that is driving your decision for whatever health concerns you have within your family or with your children, then you're probably going to be really looking at that virtual option, that 100% virtual option. And so we are going to stop periodically to ask questions. We've kind of chunked the presentation into different sections, and we're going to stop and answer questions at each section. Okay? And I'm going to introduce Ms. Susan Getz, who's the Executive Director of Leadership, and she's going to start us off.
Hello, okay. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Thornton said, tonight we're going to share the 2 options that you will be choosing from. We're going to go through each of those. Clicker? Oh, here's the clicker. Sorry, I missed the clicker. Okay, so we're going to start with pre-K through 3, and we're going to discuss those 2 options there. We're then going to move on to health mitigation. We're going to talk about technology. Then we will move to the grades 4 through 12 options. Then we will talk a little bit about CTE and transportation, and then we're going to explain how you're going to make your selection. So just so you know what the process will be. We will be taking questions from you all periodically. We will stop and take questions. We're also going to be taking questions on our live stream that we have folks monitoring. If your question does not get answered, because it may not, we will be posting them on our FAQ document that will be posted on Wednesday. So you can leave your question with us, and obviously if those of you who are live streaming, we will get those questions and post them if you do not get your questions answered tonight. Okay, the first thing we want to start with is just to have some terminology that we're going to be discussing, just so that we're all on the same page about what do these things mean. The first one you might hear about is synchronous. So we want to explain, what does synchronous mean? And that's the learning that occurs during the live instruction. And it could either be in person, where the teacher is there teaching, or it could be through Zoom, where there's a live teacher teaching your children. And that's synchronous. Asynchronous is learning that occurs without live instruction, without a live teacher. So it might be in the form of a video or self-paced work that you're doing on your own. Remote learning is learning that occurs outside of the school building for option 1 students. Virtual learning is learning that occurs outside the building for option 2 students. So these are the students who are 100% virtual no matter what the option 1 students are doing. Finally, Canvas. And Canvas is a learning management system that we are using. The state of Virginia has adopted it and has supplied it for us to use. And it is just going to help facilitate our teaching and learning online. It is where we will house our curriculum. So when you hear about Canvas, and we will actually have a brief demonstration of what it looks like a little bit later. So as I stated, you will have 2 options for elementary pre-K through 3. In option 1, it's an in-person continuum. We will begin on an A-B schedule. So students will come to school on either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday. If you choose option 1, the in-person continuum, it is a commitment for the entire school year. So what you are saying is, I want my children to be in school regardless if it's what phase we're in. If it's possible, I want my children to be in school. For option 2, that's 100% virtual. You're not coming to school. Even if we're allowing kids in, you're electing to keep your children at home and do virtual learning. In virtual learning, you need to have high-speed, reliable internet access. If you don't, it really is going to be impossible to do this option. Parents are going to assume a large role in monitoring student learning. Okay, each day that students have assignments, parents are going to assume a large role in making sure that it gets done. This is a commitment for the first semester. So at the end of the first semester, depending on how things are looking around, if you decide you would like to have your children come to in-person and we are offering it, you will have that option. Okay, again, this is just the continuum. You've probably seen this before, but for our in-person continuum, for pre-K through 3, it will start on an A-B model. All right, let's take a look at the schedule a little closer. So for A-B schedule, obviously, you're going to have a group of kids, they're going to be divided, and you will be placed on either an A group or a B group. We will be placing you on your group, and you will be informed of that decision of whether you're A or B based on when you tell us if you want option 1. Okay? So obviously what you're seeing here is if you're an A student, on Monday you will be in person. So you'll come to school, you will learn from your teacher. On B day, on Tuesday, you will be at home learning. On Wednesday, you will be back in school. On Thursday, you will be at home learning. And on Friday, you will be at home learning. And we're going to talk a little more closely about these. So the daily schedule of when you are in person is a traditional schedule. It's going to look to your children just like normal school in a sense. You will have the same subjects. Your elective and resource classes you will also have, so they'll have PE, they'll have art classes, music classes. They may look a little different in the things that we're doing, but you will still have those courses. They will have recess. It will look different. The playground equipment will not be used. Kids aren't going to be closely together. They will be doing activities and fun things, but it will be done socially distanced. Lunch will also be served in the classroom because kids will not be going to and from the cafeteria. What we are trying to do is limit their transitions as much as possible. In the classroom, students will be physically distant, so they'll be 6 feet in between the desks. Individually designated supplies. So we want kids to have their own supplies so they don't have to share pencils, crayons, what have you. Students will also be given a device, and we will talk more about that later, but they will have a device given to them that will come back and forth to school. Every night when it goes home, it needs to be fully charged, so it comes back to school the next day charged and ready to use. On Monday, or whatever your in-person day is, at the end of the day, the teacher will give the students an opportunity to download the material for the next day. So, if you're a student who does not have good, reliable, high-speed internet at home, on the in-person days, you will have the opportunity to download the assignments from Canvas so that you can access them at home using your device on the at-home learning days. If you have high-speed, reliable internet and you don't want to, then you wouldn't have to do this, but we are going to provide it each day so the children have it at home. So if you have high-speed internet access at home and your child doesn't need to download it, your child wouldn't have to do it, but we are going to provide time at the end of those in-person days for children to download the content that they will do at home the next day. Okay. All right. Wait, did I already do that? Sorry. Okay, grading and feedback. Students will receive traditional grades and classwork, quizzes, tests, just like they have done in the past. It'll be very traditional. It'll just be done, some of those assignments may be done at home on the remote days. Some will be done while it's in person. Students in elementary school who have received individual reading conferences will still get those reading conferences, just as they have done in the past. We will take attendance each day. If your child is absent, then you should send in a note, just as you have done in the past. On remote days, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but on remote days, we will be taking attendance on those days as well, but it's based on, was the work completed? If the work was completed, your child would be considered present. School visitors, unfortunately, given our circumstances, we will not be able to have visitors come to the classrooms or in schools, such as bringing lunches to kids or celebrations. We will have to limit the access of our visitors. Parents, however, will be able to come to the building if they have a meeting that was prearranged, or they have to drop off medication or pick up their child early or bring them in late. They will still be able to come. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Mr. Lombardo, our Assistant Superintendent.
Okay, so we'll sort of pick up now at the remote learning days, and that's what Ms. Getz described as those asynchronous days, when the students are on their day at home learning. And so here, it's very important to note that they'll use their Isle County Schools device, and they'll use that device to access Canvas assignments, whether they're doing it through your internet at home or the content that they've downloaded the previous day at school to their device. So here you can see about 2 to 3 hours maximum of work for this age group for the day that they're at home. And here's just a little breakdown. It wouldn't be this way every day, but it's a nice example. 30 minutes of independent reading. And that's, of course, all of this is guided by the teacher as part of the plan for that day when they're at home. As far as what the students are engaging in. 30 to 45 minutes of additional review material, 20 minutes of pre-recorded video around new learning. So this is where, even though your child's not at school, their teacher is going to be recording themselves, doing a reading mini lesson, a math mini lesson. In that way, you can have new learning with the teacher at home on that day through the recorded video. And then you can also see right after that, the next bullet, is the around 30-minute time frame, but that work would be directly tied to that mini lesson that the teacher delivered through the video, which is recorded. Teachers will provide a schedule of assignments and approximate time each should take. And so, at home as the parents and guardians, you'll decide exactly what that day looks like, but we are asking that our teachers provide a sample of, hey, here's a good example of what a schedule might look like for you at home for your child to complete the assignments on that day. When the assignments are completed, again, that's really at your discretion, but we definitely want our teachers to provide some good examples of that for you. You may choose to follow those pretty closely, actually. And then the assignments must be completed for the next in-person learning day. And so you can just see that they'll build upon one another and they'll be connected. So it's very important that the children complete the work, and that way they'll be ready for their new day of learning at school with the teacher. So, this has always been important. I can remember my days as a teacher and even as a principal really talking a lot with parents about really setting that time and place for work to be completed at home. Usually we're talking about homework, right? But in this case, it's so important that you really establish that routine, that comfortable place, distraction-free as much as possible. So just some considerations there for you to be thinking about, especially on that remote learning day from home. And so again, on the remote learning days, here's that sample schedule. And of course, there's a lot of flexibility here for you at home. But this is probably something like what your child's teacher would provide you with. And you can just see there the breakdown. And in the middle of the day, you can see there's sort of that lunch and outdoor activity. But again, for this age group, it's so important that they have some time to kind of get the wiggles out, have some activity, and then re-engage. You can kind of see the way this one's broken out with reading in the morning, and then after lunch and maybe some activity, they would engage in the math. One thing I would point out here, whether it's the 9 a.m. or the 1 o'clock time slot, you can see there that's where they're watching that recorded video, the new learning video, and then the assignment that follows is directly tied to that. All right, so I think we'll take a pause here and we'll see if we have questions. What we'll do is we'll take 5 minutes. You know, if we need that amount of time, we'll take 5 minutes. We'll entertain any questions right now around what we just presented so that we can stay real focused as a group on the pre-K 3 option 1 in-person continuum that we just presented to you. So we'd be happy to entertain questions. Yeah, so the question was, will the PowerPoint that we're presenting tonight be available? And yes, we will make that available a couple of different ways, but you'll have access to it.
And then for the AV option, so what I'd like to know is, so I have three children that would be on the same schedule. Are you all going to try family life together as a whole, or are we going to be divided from one to each other? You know what I'm saying?
Right, so the question was around having more than one child and the concept of the A-B days. So what we would want to do is keep families together so that the children would be sort of like a little family cohort. And in that way, they would attend on the same day, whether it was A or B.
It's going to, so if you have two that are in the same grade, putting them in the same class because of that same reason, or would that help?
No, that wouldn't necessarily matter. We'll make sure that your whole family is on an A day or a B day, and that will include middle and high school. If we do return to an in-person A-B model, all family members, K-12, will be on the same A-B schedule.
Question in the back. Let me see if I can get a little closer just so I can hear you.
Will their progress be tracked by one teacher? So if they progress further into the and all this stuff, and they move forward?
So, yes, you will have a designated in-person teacher who will work with your child each day. Question right here? Yes, ma'am. So on Mondays when they are in school, they will have their own device. And the students will be given time to download the material from Canvas, which is the system that we're using. It's going to house the curriculum. They will have the opportunity to download it on their device. So on their Tuesday, let's say, when they're at home, they will be able to do the work from that device. Also, teachers are still going to use paper, so there might be some little videos in addition to some paperwork that kids are going to complete. Uh-huh.
She's a speech therapist on Monday and Wednesday, and I've already filled out paperwork to see if she was able to get her school. So the question is, the thing is, the way that it is this will it actually keep her in her speech therapy where she attends in Hollywood?
If she is in speech therapy that we are providing and it's going to be in person, we will continue to provide speech therapy.
We have a couple of questions online.
And we have one back here. If I can get to this one very quickly,
Okay.
please. Mhm.
I actually have two questions.
Please.
I totally understand about like state regulations requiring recess, library, and all those resource classes. However, given that these young kids are only going to be in person with their teacher 2 days a week, would it make more sense, or are we able to concentrate more on those core classes? I just worry about those kids that really struggle in math and that sort of thing. They're only going to have 2 days with their teacher and with Common Core math and stuff that parents have a hard time helping with the kids at home. Would it make more sense in that versus libraries. My kid reads all the time at home, and reset, I mean, and PE and that sort of thing. Shouldn't really need that at school, which needs routine.
Did you want to answer that?
That's a very good question. And as we were assessing the different plans and what to do, we wanted our students to get back to normalcy as soon as possible. And as they're back these 2 days, we're also going to be putting in assessments to find out where they are and where there are possible gaps to inform the teachers for instruction. So once we get moving, we may incorporate more time where we pull out for math or we pull out for reading and things like that. But we really want to get back to normalcy first.
Being able to download the assignments at the end of the day, these young kids, is someone going to help them and to ensure that it downloaded correctly so the parent doesn't get home and like, oh, they're not getting it.
Yeah, the teacher will work to do that. And, keep in mind, there won't be 24 students in the classroom, so it'll be a small number, and the teachers will work with the students. And if it's very young students, our kindergarten, we do have some IAs in there. But yes, we will help them. And really, they do learn pretty quickly. They'll get used to it. But in the beginning, there's definitely going to need to be some training.
And that, just real quickly, that last question that Ms. Getz just responded to was about downloading the content from Canvas. For our folks in the room, you may not have been able to hear it, but also we're going to make sure we repeat the questions just because the folks joining us on the live stream most likely did not hear it. So we'll make sure we repeat them for you guys.
Okay, we did have a couple of questions online from our online participants. Will students go to a different room for resource and encore classes, or will the encore teachers rotate to them? And we've discussed that our students will transition to the encore rooms. Those rooms are much larger and allow for more social distancing for students to engage in activities. And also it gives them a little bit of breakup during the day from being in the same space all the time.
Yes, and we will be cleaning the rooms after one group has been in the rooms. We will clean the surfaces. Students will walk to resource wearing masks. But we did have a lot of discussion about this and felt like kids needed to have some break of leaving that classroom throughout the day.
One more question that we had here was that would requests for specific A-B schedules be taken into consideration? And as Ms. Getz said during her presentation, we'll be placing students based on numbers and what it looks like for where they'll be on either A or B. And then after we have been through that, if it is an option, we'll consider those requests on a case-by-case basis.
I think we have a question right here.
Will students be required to take a COVID test before they return to school?
Okay, the question was, will students be required to take a COVID test before they return to school? So the answer to that is no, they would not be required, but I will say we're going to be going through the mitigation strategies and also the CDC guidelines around that. So the answer is no, but please stay tuned because we're going to go into much more detail into that topic.
So you said, y'all said the use of masks will be required. Will we provide the mask or will y'all provide the mask? I got two questions.
Okay, so the first question is, as you know, we have talked about masks being required when social distancing cannot be maintained. So we will be providing one mask for our students. Certainly you may have certain preferences or your child might, but we will have that mask available for them in the event that they don't have one.
Okay, and God forbid that someone in the classroom for the in-school, what is y'all's plan for in the event that someone in that classroom becomes a PUI or a positive test? What is your notification back to everybody else in the room?
So that's an excellent question. The question is around the protocol if we have, for instance, a positive case or a suspected case. And if you can hang on, you'll see in the next section here, we do address that. And then there may be some follow-up questions when we get to the next question mark on that topic. And how about if we take one more question here? I think we're almost out of time, but.
As far as devices for pre-K through third, it is iPads.
That's correct. the question was devices for pre-K through third grade, and we will be giving every child an iPad, and we have a little bit more information on that as well coming up. Okay, so we'll move on, and a couple of the questions here near the end were kind of bleeding over into mitigation and some of the CDC guidelines. And so we'll address much of that in these next few slides. So, you know, face coverings, they will be required, and it's as I said before, when you cannot maintain at least that 6 feet of social distance. And of course, they would be required common areas, buses, hallways, and in the classrooms if you, again, could not be 6 feet apart. Hand sanitizer stations are being installed and in many cases are already there throughout the buildings. All classrooms will be provided with hand sanitizer bottles. All classrooms will receive disinfecting wipes, also a Virex disinfectant spray bottle, which will be a very important part of the cleaning. Bottle filling stations in all schools. So we won't use traditional water fountains. Mr. Coleman, who takes care of our operations types items, he's been on that, and they are well underway in installing those bottle filling stations in the schools. And then staff will refer students to the clinic who display COVID-19-like symptoms, and we'll give a little more information on that in just a minute. And then in the event that we have a suspected case or symptoms, school nurse will notify the nursing supervisor, and they'll follow all of the protocols that we're going to mention from CDC. So cleaning is a very important part of this process. So high-touch areas clean 3 times a day. And you can think of what those high-touch areas are in a school, and there's a lot of them, but there's just an example: switches, railings, doors. Cleaning of classrooms, desks, tables, and counters. Lunch will be eaten in the classrooms, but SSC, who does all of our custodial work, they'll be wiping down tables after lunch in elementary classrooms. And the secondary part we can skip over. Hand sanitizer stations will be checked frequently, make sure that they are sufficiently loaded. Restrooms will be checked hourly and cleaned 3 times daily at a minimum. And custodians and assistant principals will sign off with the time after inspecting. We have classroom disinfectant foggers if indeed we have a situation where we have a classroom that needs more extensive cleaning and a disinfecting. Electrostatic sprayers are also available in the event that we have to have more extensive cleaning. And SSC, again, who does our custodial services, will also be increasing their staffing during school hours. So for our pre-K through 3, during school hours, you will see that there is an increased presence in the SSC staff to take care of many of these items that I just mentioned, because you can see that would be more extensive than would normally be done for custodians in our schools during the day. So just a bit more on health mitigation. Plexiglass barriers in front offices and clinics, and you've probably seen these in places of business recently, or medical counters, wherever you may have been recently. And there's just an example that you can see in the picture. So students, more than ever, it's important for them to have their own instructional materials and not to be sort of crossing those materials with each other. But you have your materials as a student, and those are the only materials you would use. We'll have tremendous amount of signage located throughout the schools and also on the property. And again, you've probably seen a lot of this in the community already, and it'll be similar, and some of it's maybe a little bit more developmentally appropriate or appropriate for schools, but it's very similar type of signage. We're going to limit access to common areas. We'll also, as Ms. Getz said, limit some of that movement throughout the buildings. There'll be some movement, but we're certainly going to limit that. We'll also need to limit school visitors, which was mentioned earlier, and volunteers, and also limit the facility use that takes place through our community organizations. And health mitigation for staff, all right? So in this case, face coverings, again, no different than the students, for our staff will be required if they cannot physically distance at least 6 feet. Other PPEs, like face shields, may be necessary, but that really depends on the specific nature of the teacher's work. They may be doing work in which they need a little bit of extra PPE, and we're going to be providing that for our staff and students' protection. And this part here just really speaks to that third bullet, really speaks to the fact that a face shield might be used. It does provide a different type of protection, but even in the event that a face shield is used, a cloth covering would still be required for that teacher. A cloth covering and the face shield would be necessary. And so for our staff, you might be wondering about, well, are they all going to get together in small meeting rooms and all like they do? No, we're going to really be making sure that we're following CDC guidelines, and our principals are already developing plans around how they conduct meetings, how they use some of our virtual opportunities, and if folks need to get together, that we're following CDC guidelines. Washing hands frequently is going to be so important in sanitizing for our staff. And then also our staff will self-monitor using the symptom questionnaire and self-report around symptoms related to COVID-19. And we're going to be getting into that a little bit and what that means for you at home and also for your children as far as checking with the children daily on a very similar questionnaire. And I think Dr. Kale at this time.
All right, so we are following the most up-to-date protocols from CDC. We're monitoring their site on a regular basis and noting that when there are changes to their practice that we are also implementing those changes. Currently, the CDC does not actually recommend temperature checking at the early ages or at the beginning of school. So we know that that goes in a lot of smaller impact businesses or places where one or two people are coming in, but they're actually saying now that it's not as effective as a screening tool and that universal symptom screenings just won't be effective for schools. So we are going to ask that parents are using this daily protocol. We'll have it available on our website. We'll be happy to provide you copies of it. But that you're checking your child each day before you send them to the bus or before you bring them to school to make sure that they don't have a fever, that they aren't exhibiting any of the COVID-19 symptoms, okay? All of those symptoms are outlined on this sheet here, and they list it off in questions. I know it's kind of hard to read with that small print there, but we will have copies available for you. So symptoms look a lot like other things that you're familiar with, like strep throat or like the common cold or a flu, allergies even. And so we have thought about what are we going to do if a student shows up or a staff member shows up and they have those symptoms. So the first thing we're going to do is send them down to the nurse's office, and the nurse is going to evaluate them. They are medical professionals. They've been trained in all of this, and they work right alongside the Virginia Department of Health. So they'll be working with them. They'll isolate those people. We will have a separate space for them where the nurse will be managing what that looks like. And if they're just symptomatic, we're just going to send them home. They'll be isolated, and they'll be able to self-monitor from there. If we have a confirmed case, that individual would be isolated. We would begin contact tracing immediately, and our nurses have all been trained on how to do that, or will be trained through the Virginia Department of Health on how to start that process. And then they'll be required to isolate at home for 14 days or until they meet the guidelines to return. And we're going to talk about what those guidelines look like. So I think, or I know I had COVID-19 and I had symptoms. So these are different from people who are asymptomatic. So they can come back to school or work when they have had 10 days pass since their first symptoms appear, keep in mind these are not either or, this is and 24 hours with no fever without the use of fever-reducing medication, and COVID-19 symptoms have improved. So for example, they're no longer exhibiting cough or shortness of breath. I tested positive for COVID-19, but I had no symptoms. So these are those asymptomatic folks. So if they continue to have no symptoms, they can be with folks after 10 days, after it's been since they were exposed or since they had a positive test. So they just have to wait 10 days. If you were severely ill, those people may have to stay home even longer than 10 days. Should be prepared to stay home for close to 20 days after symptoms first appeared, depending on how quickly they recover. That would be one where they would also speak with their healthcare provider, and your healthcare provider is going to help guide you and direct into when you can return. So for anyone who's been around a person with COVID-19, so you went to work and you happened to be around someone that was discovered through contact tracing that they were positive for COVID-19. So what do I do? So if you have had close contact with those people and developed COVID-19 illness within the past 3 months or didn't develop, and or if you did, you have recovered and remain without those symptoms. So you continue not to have those symptoms at any time. You can also be tested. Tests are offered for free. So anytime you feel that that's an issue, you can always be tested through the health department. So what questions do you have about mitigation strategies?
So you talked a little bit about lunches. Can we still send those children lunches?
Yes.
And then,
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, can parents still send lunch with their child? The answer is yes. You may still pack your child's lunch and send it to school with them.
and I know you said that each child needs to bring their own food supply. One thing that I've done every single year is I always buy 2 sets of supplies for each one of our kids and donate to the teacher. It's probably some donate to the teacher, but there's still a lot of kids I know that have been able to utilize those supplies. Is that still an option? Is that something we can do when they're like unopened, brand new, or whatever, or no?
So the question is about donating supplies to students in need. And just know that we work with community partners to gather and collect those supplies, and we'll make sure that all students have what they need.
But if you would like to donate, I mean, we will certainly take your donations if you would like to. Yes. If you would like to donate supplies, we'll happily take your supplies. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a question here in the back.
So I just want to be clear on the final definition of close contact, because if the children are supposed to be in the classroom 6 feet apart, all masks on, are you considering that close contact if someone becomes positive, or because they followed the proper protocol? What is considered, or what is y'all's definition of close contact?
So the CDC, the question was about what we define as close contact in terms of contact tracing if there's a positive case. The CDC defines that as being within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. Then you would be identified as having a contact.
So when you talked about cleaning the rooms and using disinfectant spray and you have available for the teachers, are they asthma safe? And is there consideration for any child that does have asthma who may be in that room and using that disinfectant while they're in the room?
So the question is about the cleaning of classrooms and the types of disinfectants that would be used. And for instance, if a child is asthmatic, would that be taken into consideration? So we do have cleaning supplies that are approved and that we're using within the guidelines from CDC. And I think what we would want to do is look at any individual student and that teacher in that classroom, if there's a specific need. But in general, I would say we're going to be using the cleaning disinfectants that are approved for school use. Of course, there could be a situation on a case by case where the parent and or teacher may want to talk about a specific need for a child and any condition that they may have. We certainly would want to know about that. But I would just say that we're planning to use the disinfectants that are approved and for school use for this situation. So the question is about symptoms, and what about a student who has a runny nose or seasonal allergies? And I think, as Dr. Kale pointed out on one of the previous slides, those are symptoms of COVID-19. So using the CDC protocol, that would be treated as a symptom, and we would go through the symptom protocol, even with those cases.
So it wouldn't be 14 days every time they have a runny nose. The protocol does call for 10 days of isolation and with no additional symptoms.
I'd like to add to that as well. So when this happens and they have that runny nose and they go to the nurse is going to contact the parent as well and talk about the history of the child. They're then going to call our local Virginia Health Department to get guidance. And so they will inform us at that point, yes, you need to do isolation for 10 days and bring us some guidance to that. So we're not just going to willy-nilly make that call because someone has sniffles.
Are the kids gonna have to wear their mask all day long?
Right, so the question is, would students have to wear their mask all day long? And so as we talked about in those first couple of slides, anytime that a student is in transition, so if they are on the bus, if they're in the hallways, and anytime that they can't be 6 feet apart, that's the real key. Anytime they can't be 6 feet apart within their classroom, they would have to have that mask on. But if they are sitting at their desk or their table, they are socially distanced, and they're 6 feet from other people, they would be allowed to take that mask off.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here in the back. I'll go back here and I'll come right to you, sir.
How are you guys going to help the kids maintain an understanding, especially talking about the kindergartners and much smaller children? What is 6 feet? How far do I need to be apart? How do we encourage and maintain that?
Okay, so the question is around how do we work with the students to make sure they understand social distancing? What is 6 feet? How do you maintain that distance? So as you probably already know, teachers and our staff work a great deal with the students on routines, procedures, expectations. So what this has done is added a new, actually several new pieces to that work. So our teachers do an amazing job, especially with the little ones, of really teaching those routines and procedures, practicing them, making sure they understand why we're doing certain things the way we're doing them, and also doing it in a way that doesn't upset the children, but makes them feel better about their classroom and safety. So it will be part of the routines and procedures this year when we start the year with our children. And sir, you had a question. So the question is about the type of mask that would be allowed, and that some masks do have a valve that you're describing. And so I think what we have said is that cloth face coverings would be required. But that's a good question. We may get a little more out on that on our FAQ that we put out on Wednesday, just to provide a little more clarity. But to this point, what we have said is a cloth face covering.
Mr. Lombardo, can I also add the cloth face covering has to cover around the chin. So we won't be allowing students to do kind of the bandana kind of thing where because we can't ensure that that's going to adequately provide protection to others. So it will be a standard face cloth, top and bottom.
So the question is about the face masks that have a valve in them. And I think we would like to reach out to our health department contact and get some more information on the exact type of mask that you're describing, and then we will get more information out to you about that.
So since that topic is on the table too, I think another thing I see people wearing are the gaiters. And a test you can do at home, if the face covering if you're able to blow through that face covering and blow out a lighter or a match, that's not a face covering. And so that's a simple test. There's a lot of people out there with these gaiters that have absolutely no protection, and the air comes through them. So if you have the mask over, you should not be able to feel a breath coming through that mask.
Right back here.
I just want to ask this question. We're all sitting here, social distancing, 6 feet apart, everyone's wearing their mask, but now we're saying that it's going to be okay for our children to go into schools, social distance, 6 feet apart, and not wear masks. What is the difference between this social setting and our kids in school? I need to ask that because I feel like we're setting a double standard here with parents sitting here 6 feet apart, social distancing. We got them with masks, and I think if you take your mask off, you can be frowned upon, but now you're asking us to let our children come back 6 feet apart and no mask. Sorry for the question, but
So the question is, why are you all sitting here with a mask? You're socially distanced. Why are we saying the children don't have to wear their masks? If you are 6 feet apart and we're following the CDC guidelines, they say you do not have to have your mask on. So if you are 6 feet apart sitting in this room, technically you do not have to wear your mask. You all are wearing your mask. I think that's good protocol to wear your mask. When we are in the classroom, I think we are being very realistic about kids who are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Wearing a mask for 7 hours a day is really challenging. It's challenging for me as an adult. And so we are trying to balance being realistic and keep our children safe. And if we are in a classroom with half the number of students and we are able to distance them and they're working independently, we have said we feel comfortable with them taking down their masks so they can breathe for a little while. But if they are moving about, going in the classroom, walking, going to the restroom, they will have to wear their mask. And the last thing I'll say, if you feel very uncomfortable with what we are suggesting and what our plan is going to be, then you probably should opt for option 2, which is the 100% virtual model, where your child will not come to school. Yes, ma'am.
If you decided to do 100% virtual but had poor internet, would you be able to like get a device, download it at school, and then bring it back to your house?
So the question is, what if you want to do 100% virtual, but you do not have good internet? And we are going to get into that a little bit, but I will say that all of our school parking lots are hot spots. We have buses parked that are hot spots. So if you wanted to do virtual and you do not have good internet access, you can do that. Is it the easiest? Probably not. Is it ideal? Probably not. But if you would like to do it, you can make it work. It just requires a lot more on you, the parent, to make sure you're driving your child to a parking lot to download the information for them to do at a later date. Question?
Sorry, so piggyback off of her, instead of, you had said, you have to make sure you take the student and whatever. I mean, if the student can stay at home with the other parent or whoever, couldn't I just go to the parking lot and download whatever needed to be done, or does it specifically have to be the student?
So you're asking if the parent could take the device and download it. Yes, I would. That is correct. You wouldn't necessarily have to have your student in the parking lot while you downloaded it.
I would like to add to that, Ms. Getz.
Yes.
So if you're 100% virtual, you do have 2 hours, 3 days a week, that you will be Zooming with your teacher, and you will have to stay in a parking lot or in a library to do that Zooming, or you will have no face-to-face instruction for your child whatsoever. So the 100% virtual model is a model that's been around for over 20 years, and we've designed it in that same manner that virtual learning occurs. There needs to be face-to-face instruction, although that is a smaller portion than what normally happens in a school, and now there is more on the parent and more on the child to do independent, but you still need that Zoom. So if you do not have high-speed internet, it is not a good option unless you are willing to sit there for those 2 hours.
Okay, question?
Are those 2 hours all at once, or is that 2 or 3 hours, just 2 hours?
I'm getting ready to do the virtual schedule right now, if you want to hold some of those questions, and we'll do the virtual schedule. This gentleman has a question. I don't... Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
So, what about if the children go outside for recess? They not gonna be 6 feet apart, they're gonna be running around playing with their friends. Are they still gonna have a mask on?
So that's a good question. The question is about during recess. How do we keep kids distanced during recess? And I will like to say that we did hold summer school, in-person summer school, and it actually went quite well. We did a lot of training of routines, a lot of visuals of what 6 feet looks like, and we made it work. To be quite honest with you, we did make it work, and it worked well. You know, you have a small group of students, you go outside, maybe you're doing sidewalk chalk, you're doing some fun things, but you're doing them independently as opposed to with a group of kids. It is more challenging, yes, but we are making it work, and we do have a plan for that. It's a lot of training ahead of time for the students.
So just one more comment before we go on to the next section, because this is serious and a serious decision for you. I just want you to know, if you choose the in-person continuum, and the board voted for that for the pre-K through 3, and 9 weeks we'll see where we are. Anywhere between that point, if we start to have cases in a classroom, I may shut down that classroom. We do not have to call a school board meeting to do it. I will be working directly with the Virginia Department of Health, and I may shut down that classroom. If it gets to the point where VDH is informing me, Dr. Thornton, you need to close that school, I will close that school. If they advise us, this is too big for the whole area right now, there's too many cases in the area and is now affecting the general population, we may close the division. So there are still many safety precautions if you choose in person and want your child in school. That doesn't mean we're going to keep the school open no matter what. And that's why we have that continuum. We're constantly going to be monitoring our area in Isle of Wight, the Hampton Roads area, and working with our local Virginia Department of Health to make those decisions.
Okay, should we move on? If you can hold your questions, okay. We're getting ready to talk about it right now.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so it's coming up. Just hold on, we're getting there. Yep. All right, let's talk about option 2 now. Again, we're talking about pre-K through 3rd grade, and these are the parents who want their children to be at home. They don't want them to do any in-person at all throughout the course of the year. Even if in-person's offered, they're not comfortable with it. They want their children at home. The thing that I want to really stress here is that students who are 100% virtual students will have dedicated teachers who are doing only virtual learning. So these teachers are not doing in-person and virtual. When you select option 2, I want 100% virtual, you have dedicated teachers who are doing only virtual. No. Okay, so for pre-K through 3, parents will select a block. You will select a morning block or an afternoon block, whatever is most convenient for you, whatever your child prefers. Some people are morning people, some are not. If you choose the 9 to 11 o'clock morning block, it's 2 hours that your teacher will Zoom with your child. That will be on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. You will have live Zooms. So your child will log in at 9, a teacher will be there, they will Zoom with that teacher until 11 o'clock, and then the child may have some additional work to do after that, assignments independently. On Wednesday and Friday are going to be those asynchronous days that are going to be remote learning at home, but we will talk more about that in just a minute. The synchronous days with the teacher. So for example, if you have a kindergartner, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine a 5-year-old on a Zoom for 2 hours. You're right, I can't either. So how that might look is when you will get your child logged on at 9, but Zoom has a great feature called Breakout Rooms, and it allows the teacher to utilize small groups. So where a teacher might be working with a group of 3 students, the other, let's say 6 students, might be in another room. They're still on Zoom, they haven't gotten off, but they're on another room through Zoom working on independent work while the teacher's working with a small group. The teacher can then leave that small group with independent work and go check on what the other group of students are doing. So it's almost very similar to what they get in real life, because in traditional school, we have groups of students, and the students go into stations, and they do different things while they're in those stations, and teachers are working with a small group. It's going to look a lot like that, but virtually. So you do not have to log on and log off constantly during that 2-hour block. You will stay logged in, and your student will be getting work. It'll be some live, they're doing independent, then they'll come back and work with their teacher. It's going to be a lot of that back and forth. Okay, we'll talk, and we're going to go into more detail. So virtual learning, this does follow our framework, and this is the framework that our teachers are very used to using. It's providing some direct instruction and then utilizing groups and rotations within the classroom. It's the same thing, but we're doing it virtually. Parents will have the option to select block 1, which is AM instruction, or block 2, which is PM instruction. You will have up to 2 hours of live instruction with a teacher, and that will be age appropriate. It may not be realistic for 2 hours the first day for kindergartners. We're going to have to build up to that, okay? But they will have a live teacher 3 days a week working with them. Class meetings will be recorded. So when your teacher is Zooming with your child and providing a math lesson, that lesson will be recorded. It will be uploaded to Canvas, because if you can't access it at that moment or you need to refer back to it, you can do that through Canvas.
And just to point something out with that, with the recording, we've had this question, I think, previously. All it's recording is the teacher. So it's not recording the whole Zoom. It's recording the teacher and their mini lesson or whatever they're delivering, just so you know what the recording would look like.
Mm-hmm. In addition to this virtual learning that's happening live between the students and the teacher, there will also be some additional work that the child will do outside of the Zoom meetings. And that's going to be 30 minutes of independent reading. If you've been here in Isle of Wight, you know we do 30 minutes of independent reading every single day. We're still going to do that, so you'll be doing that with your child. And then up to 60 minutes of additional work. And again, that will be age appropriate. What's appropriate for a kindergartner to do independently may not be the same as what a 3rd grader could do independently. So it will be very age appropriate. So again, we're still talking about those synchronous days. So teachers will provide a weekly agenda to parents each Friday by 5 p.m. And this is going to include topics for the week and the assignments to complete it each day, including those days that are asynchronous when the child's working independently on his or her own. So we felt that providing a schedule of these are the assignments, it might take this long to complete, would help parents in order to complete the virtual learning. Each student will be assigned a designated device. We've already talked about that. I think the main thing there for parents is when the Zoom starts, make sure the device is fully charged and ready to go. And again, we've also mentioned this, but it is really important to establish a routine for your child. Children love routines. Adults like routines too. Establish a routine, a bedtime, a get-up time. Where are you going to do your work? What's going to be free from distractions, comfortable but not too comfortable you fall asleep. Maybe away from the dog that might be barking. But find a good little home school setup for your child each day to do their work. So on the days that your child does not have a live teacher, they will have work that's still going to be done that's going to be loaded on Canvas. And this will be 2 to 3 hours max, depending again on the age of the child. But it might be something like this. You might have 30 minutes of independent reading, because we do that every day regardless. You might have 30 minutes of additional review material from the day before. There might be a 20-minute pre-recorded video around some sort of new learning or a couple of different new learning topics that the teacher recorded in advance and then loaded on Canvas that your child can now view. Might be a 30-minute follow-up assignment, might be some ST math, and we are going to offer some resource classes such as PE and art. We're still finalizing what that schedule is going to look like, but we will have some of that available to your child. Work should be completed by the next day where the Zoom is going to happen. So that work that happens while the child's working independently should be completed by the next day that the teacher sees the child on Zoom. Okay, so here's another, again, this is just a sample, because on Wednesdays and Fridays, you have a lot of flexibility. You don't have a set schedule that you have to be on a Zoom, but you might have 2 to 3 hours of work where your child needs to complete it. So again, this is just an example. You might have a 15-minute video that you have to watch on Canvas. This might be around new learning, because we're still responsible for teaching all of the standards. That has not changed. So we have to do new learning even when the students aren't with the teacher directly. It might be another 30 minutes that you're going to complete the assignment. You might have another 30 minutes where you're going to do your independent reading. There's a resource class, and we're going to try to offer those resource classes live. It really all depends on how the numbers end up with our schedule and how many parents choose this virtual option. If we can't do it live, we will definitely post videos so that parents and students can access those. You might want to have your child take a nice long break, go outside, stretch, run around, whatever, take a nice break, eat lunch, and then come back on, watch a math video, complete a math assignment, do a little ST math. There might be a very short social studies or science. So this is just a sample. Every day is going to look different. It's not going to be the same every single day, depending on what is required and what the teacher wants the student to do. If on these asynchronous days, so this is when a teacher's not live, you don't have a live teacher, your child's working independently. If you have a question, you can email or send it through Remind, and we'll talk about that later, the options of how you contact your teacher. But your teacher will respond within 4 hours to the question. So within 4 hours of you sending that question on those days, the teacher will submit a response. In addition, those days where you don't have a live teacher, the teacher could elect to use those days for one-on-one tutoring, small group tutoring, makeup instruction. It is at the teacher discretion. It'll be scheduled in advance. You'll know, hey, tomorrow, I know it's a Wednesday, but at 10 o'clock, could, your child log into this Zoom for 20 minutes? I need to do some reteaching. So the teachers will have that option on Wednesdays and Fridays to do that for your children. This is just another schedule, and it's the exact same amount of time, but if you notice, this one starts a little bit later. It has another break. They do a little bit of work in the afternoon, and then they have like a dinner break, and then after dinner, they do some more work. It is totally up to you how you might want to schedule your day, because you have complete flexibility on these days. Okay? Other than if a teacher requests to Zoom to do small group or one-on-one instruction, your day is pretty much open. And it's not going to look, every day is not going to have this exact same activities. Expectations, again, students are going to receive grades. And especially if they are a third grader gets letter grades, as you know. But we are grading kids. They will receive classwork, quizzes, tests, that sort of thing. Students will receive feedback. They're going to have individual reading conferences. They will receive feedback from their teacher about reading and all other performance as well. We will take attendance daily through Zoom sessions. So you're present on your Zoom, you're counted present. On the days where it's remote learning, we will count you present based on is the work completed. So we're going to use a product-based metric. So I'm not Zooming with you that day, but did you get the assignments completed? Yes, you did. Okay, you're present. Okay, and we are required by the state to take attendance. So that's why we're doing it. If your child is absent for a scheduled Zoom or ill on a day, you should contact the school and send in a note, just like you normally would, to let the teacher know, hey, my child is sick. Okay, that concludes our pre-K through 3. What questions do you have about the 100% virtual learning option? Okay. Okay, good question. The question is, how are students submitting their assignments? And that is through Canvas. So Canvas is the system, just kind of think of it as that is the vehicle that we're using to get the learning to you and for you to get the product to us. All right, good question. So the question is, if you are 100% virtual, will you still receive the same type of assessments? For example, reading, will you still be a white level or a 2R level? The answer is yes. We can still do those assessments as 100% virtual, and we will instruct you based on that, just like we would do if you were in person. Same thing with math. We can still determine what your level is, where you are, and instruct you accordingly. So those will be virtual, and we do have a number of options, the two you just mentioned, as well as some others, and we are constantly exploring to try to provide as many books as possible, but they will be virtual books. Yes? Okay, so for the 100% virtual, you are making a choice for the semester. So if you choose 100% virtual in January, you will have the option to return to in-person if we are doing that and if you would like to do that. If you are interested in the in-person option, and that means whatever in-person looks like, right now, it will look like an A-B schedule for pre-K through 3. It may not look like that in November. It could be fully on, it could be all remote, we don't know. But if you're interested in some type of in-person learning, you choose option 1, and that is for the year. And you go with whatever phase we are in. Okay, the question is, can you make changes in between? The answer is, that's going to be really difficult for us. We have a limited number of staff, and we will be assigning staff based on what your parent's request is. It would have to be a really extenuating circumstance, and we would have to be able to actually make that change for you. But we're trying to plan based on our staff and what you want. And that's why we're asking you to make a selection by this Thursday. This is your selection, and this is what we're planning for. But keep in mind, if things become unsafe in the option 1, then we will have to pull back and do some things differently. But if you're interested in in-person at all, choose option 1. If you're not, choose option 2. Yes? Yes.
So the question is around the devices that we're giving the children and what support will be provided so that families at home understand how to use it and help their child, and more importantly, the child knows how. So a couple things there. We'll be providing a great deal of training for the children on those devices, and that'll take place in the first days and weeks of school and then continue. But in addition to that, we're going to have sort of, think of it like a one-pager, just a quick tech sheet that can be helpful for those just common routine problems that might occur with a device, and so that our parents and guardians and caregivers at home would have them. Some of those problems may rise to even like a help desk type ticket, and our teachers will be helping the children with that to make sure that the device is fixed. But to answer the question, yes, training for the children, and we're also going to provide our families with resources to really help with the navigation of the devices.
We've had our kids at home, which I'm talking about my grandkids, and we stress the importance of why they can't go everywhere they're going. And they're little smart kids, right? They understand what's going on, they understand the importance of that. I just hope that you have a major consideration when you bring them back, 'cause I'm all about being, partially in school. I'm wearing a mask for everybody else's protection. But these kids have been kept away from everybody. They've missed birthdays, they missed soccer, they missed baseball, and then all of a sudden, we're going to tell them it's okay to go back to the classroom and sit around with kids without their mask on. We need to explain that. They're not dumb. We need to explain why we think that's important. That's y'all's job. But I just want to make sure we're there because they're still going to be limited everywhere else. And I trust you guys on what you're doing, but I have a third grader that he understands everything that's going on. And I'm glad I didn't bring him here because of this reason. He needs to act the same way and demonstrate that we're going to do that. Last comment. Thank you.
It's not really a question. All right, any questions? More questions? Yes, sir.
Who are the teachers going to be? Are those going to be Iowa County teachers, or are they going to be teachers throughout the state?
Yeah, so the plan is to use Isle of Wight County school teachers, but it may not be the teachers in your school. So we could have a teacher from Hardy, for example. That teacher might serve multiple schools. It honestly is going to depend on when we get the information back from you and we look at our numbers, and then we have to start assigning staff. So yes, we're looking for it to be an Isle of Wight County school teacher for elementary, but it may not be a teacher at your zone school. Yes? So, yes, so the question is if both parents are working and you're doing the virtual option, 100% virtual option, is there a teacher available in the evenings? That is not something that is in our current plan. The plan is the teacher will be working their normal hours and they'll be available during the daytime as we showed. They will have their recorded videos on Canvas, so you can download those and watch those in the evenings with your child. If you have questions, you can email, contact the teacher, and the teacher will respond to you. And there might be something that you could work out, like there's a time that the teacher could do something individually, but that is not part of the schedule each week. So the question is, if you opt for 100% virtual and you are not able to do the scheduled 2-hour Zooms, how is that going to affect your child? It will be difficult to manage that system if you cannot do the live Zooms. Because what you would be relying on at that point is videos from where the teacher recorded the videos that you would then watch at a later date. So your child would not have that live instruction happening with a teacher. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. So the question is, if the parents are unable to provide the 2 hours of Zoom because they're working, how will that affect a child's grades? The child would still be responsible for completing the assignments, and attendance would be based on the completion of those assignments. So the assignments are done, you're present. As far as grades go, teachers are going to be very flexible and understanding, to the extent that they can be. I'm not sure if that answers the question. I mean, we still have to we have to have grades. We have to, submit grades. That is a requirement. But teachers are going to be flexible and understanding given situations. This is what I would say. I would encourage you to look for childcare that can provide the Zooms. We are working with our YMCA to provide childcare at the schools, and if that is something that you would like to pursue, then that will be done in the schools, and they will provide the Zooms. The YMCA people will make sure the kids are doing Zoom. So trying to find, and I know it's a tough situation. We understand. We didn't create the situation that we're in, and we understand it is very hard. I'm a parent myself. I'm in the same boat. It is a tough situation. It's a tough choice, and you have to choose what's best for you. But I would say if you are looking at the 100% virtual, really trying to find that childcare that can provide those Zooms during the day would be the best scenario.
So what we're going to do at this time is we're going to transition to 4 through 12, and we know a lot of you are here for 4 through 12. So we're going to make that transition now and continue on. And we'll continue on in a very similar format at this time. So we've talked about this a little bit already, the instructional technology that will be available to students. And specifically here we're talking about the devices. So for our students, each student will receive in pre-K through 3rd grade, they will receive iPads. For our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, they will be receiving Chromebooks. And our 7th through 12th graders will receive laptops. And our 9th through 12th graders had already been receiving laptops in the past. Tech support, and I think I talked about this a little bit when we had a question here from our group, but we'll be providing, obviously, training to the students at all levels, but also we're going to be coming up with instructional tip sheets that can really help you and your children with those devices. And we'll still have our IT department's help desk available as well for technology difficulties.
Okay, so at this time, Ms. Formella, who is our coordinator for math and science, she's going to demo a quick video. And unfortunately, we have a little technical issue here. Our sound is not working, but she's going to just speak through it.
So I recorded this. Thank you. So I recorded, it's only a 2-minute video, and it's just to show you what Canvas looks like and some of the tools on it. But the audio is not working. So if we could just, get it started. So Canvas, when your student logs in through Clever, their Clever account, they will come to a dashboard. And the dashboard has, am I really loud? Okay, is this better? Okay, sorry. I have a mother-in-law that can't hear at home, I'm sorry. So the dashboard has multiple sections to it. If you look on the left-hand side, that's the global navigation menu. And this is where you're going to be able to contact the teacher with the inbox, and the teacher can send emails to you. This is where you're going to have, this is where you're going to have a global calendar. So teachers from every course that your child's in, especially for the middle school, high school levels, there's going to be a global calendar, so know whatever content they're enrolled in. So they have a math, a science, a history, whatever they have, all of their work is going to be put on this one global calendar, so you're going to be able to have an organizational tool that will keep you posted on what they have to do. Some of the concerns when we went out March 13th was that we had many different platforms. So one teacher was using Seesaw, one teacher was using Google Classroom, and it was driving families a little crazy, and we were all just kind of thrown into that. So we tried to find a tool, and this learning management system, Canvas, kind of addresses some of your concerns. You definitely will have this calendar. There's a color coding on the side, so each course will be different colors, so you can, if it gets too cluttered, you can always toggle on and off, so you can see specific courses. The inbox works just like your Gmail or whatever inbox you have at home to your access, but that's where the teachers can send messages to you or your student or your child, and they can also send stuff back. That's probably not going to be where the student sends back their assignments. We have an editor where when they have an assignment due, they can just hit submit, and they can either upload something if they're a higher grade level, like a Google Drive document. If they're a lower grade level, they might not be able to type, you know. They might be able to draw their answer, and there's just one button they can click and hold it up to the camera on the device and just hit send. So, or they can talk to their teacher by videoing themselves and working through the problem or something like that. So the Canvas learning management system holds our curriculum, but also has tools for you for organization and communication. And I did have the video, and we probably will be uploading it so you can hear it with my voice. And there will be other videos, mini videos that I'll make to help you, like submit an assignment and things like that, to help support you guys and your students.
Okay, so as far as the device distribution and responsibilities associated with the devices, students will be assigned Google accounts for access to Clever, which is sort of a one-stop shop for all of our apps that we have available, single sign-on system, so once they're signed on, they have access to all of those apps, and also Canvas, the learning management system. Devices will be made available before school begins for grades 4 through 12 and all 100% virtual students. So before school begins, because obviously for those students that first day will be a virtual or remote learning day. Pre-K through third grade students in person, they'll receive their device the second week of school. So the devices will be coming out to the students, but the teachers are going to be working with them, training them on their use, and then you'll see those coming home. All technical fees must be paid in full, and the device distribution form must be completed by the parent or guardian before devices are issued. And so that would be if you owe a technology repair fee or replacement fee already right now. Filtering is in place for all devices, so we do have filtering on those devices through our IT department. Parents will have the option to purchase insurance, and information regarding the insurance, we'll be getting that out to you, and that'll be sent home from your child's school.
Okay, we're ready to move on to 4 through 12. So again, 4 through 12, there are two options. We are starting in the temporarily remote option for option 1. So for parents, you are choosing option 1, which is the in-person continuum. As we start school, it is remote for the first 9 weeks, and then a decision will be made at that point. If you choose 100% virtual, again, you really need to have high-speed, reliable internet. Parents are assuming a large role in supporting and monitoring. It's a commitment for the first semester. Option 1, that in-person continuum, is a commitment for the year. So here's what the blocks will look like. Again, this is your schedule that your child will get. So, for example, a high schooler is automatically enrolled in 4 blocks, and so these will be the teaching blocks. Times look a little bit different. They are 45-minute blocks for those core classes. If you have a 4th grader, it'll look very similar. It would be a block for reading, a block for math, and a 4th grader will receive Virginia Studies. 4th graders will not receive science as a whole class this year, but because of how we're doing, we're going to look at doing just Virginia Studies for 4th grade. And then a 4th block would be for your PE and elective course. 5th graders, for example, would receive reading, math, science. There's not a social studies for 5th grade. They'll be in science. And then they will also receive a PE and elective on alternating days. Okay, middle schoolers are already scheduled with 4 blocks. They will receive their 4 blocks of whatever their schedule says. So virtual learning model, again, it follows our instructional framework that teachers are used to. Students follow a 4-block schedule. There's up to 9 hours of live, age-appropriate, interactive instruction. It's 3 days per week. Again, Wednesdays and Fridays are asynchronous days. Class meetings will be recorded each day and uploaded to Canvas for students to access at any time. So if your teacher did direct instruction, which they should be, and you need to go back and review it because you're not quite sure, you can do that through Canvas. PE and resource will be one of the 4 blocks, as I stated, for grades 4 through 8. So electives and PE will be included. In addition to the synchronous virtual learning, so in addition to the 45 minutes per class, students will complete a minimum of 30 minutes of independent reading in grades 4 through 8, and then complete up to 30 minutes of additional assignments related to their new learning for each class. So you have 4 classes, you might have an additional 2 hours of work. Teachers will provide a weekly agenda to parents each Friday by 5, and that will include the topics for the following week, assignments that need to be completed for the entire week. Each student will have a device. We've already reviewed that. Again, when they get online and they are ready for their synchronous learning, it should be fully charged and ready to go. And again, as we've stated, just having a good place for your student to engage in those Zoom sessions with the teacher is very important, and a good routine. On Wednesdays and Fridays, elementary students will use their designated device to access Canvas. It's going to be about 3 hours of their time on Wednesdays and Fridays. And here's just a sample of things that they might be doing. Might be some independent reading, 30 to 45 minutes of additional review material, pre-recorded reading video around new learning, because even on the days where there's not live Zooms happening, we will be doing new learning. A follow-up assignment related to the reading, perhaps another short recorded math video around new learning and an assignment, and then some ST math as well. And again, this is for some elementary. Teachers who, if you have a question on those asynchronous days, when you don't have a live teacher, you can submit a question to the teacher. The teacher will respond within 4 hours. On these days, the teacher still has the option, if she needs to work one-on-one with your child or with a small group, the teacher can schedule that in advance and schedule a Zoom session with your child. For middle and high school, again, they're going to use their device, but instead of 3 hours, this is going to be more like 4 hours of time. So it'll be 30 to 60 minutes for each class. So they have 4 classes, 4 blocks during the day, 30 to 60 minutes. Again, kind of depending on the age. What's appropriate for a 12th grader may not be appropriate for a 7th grader. And the same thing, teachers will respond within 4 hours of receiving a question. Teachers still have the option of doing one-on-one instruction or small group instruction with students. Expectations, you're going to get grades. Kids are getting grades, they're taking tests, they're doing classwork, all of that will be done online. If students have been receiving reading conferences up through the 5th grade, some middle school still do it, they will still get those reading conferences. Regardless, students are getting feedback about their performance from their teachers. So whereas previously in March when we shut down, there might not have been a lot of feedback, this is going to be entirely different. Teachers will provide feedback based on students' performance. Attendance will be taken each day during those Zoom sessions. So if Zoom starts at 9 o'clock, the first thing the teacher is going to do is take attendance. Mark you present if you see you on the Zoom. You will be required to have your camera on. I know that was something that we didn't necessarily require on the last shutdown. That's not going to be an option. If you're going to be present, you're going to have your camera on and you're going to engage with your teacher. On those asynchronous days, so this is when you are doing your independent work at home using Canvas. Obviously, we're not Zooming with you, so we're not checking attendance, but if you complete your work, you get the assignments done, you are considered present. If your child is absent or is not able to complete work on the Zoom day or on the asynchronous day, you just need to contact the child's teacher, send in a note, and let them know, hey, my child is sick, and we're going to handle absences just like we would. You will be given time to make that work up, because we know illnesses are going to happen. Okay, let's talk briefly about special education. So students who are in the inclusion setting, so they are included, they go to class with their general education peers, and students who are in self-contained classrooms, but they're still working on a standard curriculum, meaning they're still on an SOL track, they take SOL tests. Those students are going to attend school on the same schedule as their non-disabled peers. So whatever their grade level is doing, that's what these students are going to do. Students served in elementary and secondary intensive support needs classrooms. These are self-contained classrooms where your child does not go out into the other classroom, but they're in that classroom all day. And again, it's intensive support needs. These children will have the option of a hybrid model, this A-B schedule that we've been talking about. They have the option of that, or these students can also have the 100% virtual option. We're looking at walk-in related services such as speech, and we're hoping to be able to provide that, so a schedule for and more information about that will be coming. Virtual options will be available for the IEP process for those students who have higher risk or who have severe illnesses. Okay, and that will be handled through the IEP process.
Okay, so for career and technical education, our CTE programming, students will be given the opportunity to earn certifications from 2019 and 20. So our returning students, our teachers are going to be working with them to earn certifications that they may have missed out on from the time of the closure on back in March. Students scheduled in the double-blocked Career Academy courses will follow the AB schedule for their Career Academy class only. And so that was part of when the board voted. That was one of the pieces that they voted on. And so what we'll be doing is for our programs that are double blocked, like welding, culinary arts, agriculture, building trades, and so on, for those programs, we will be having those students have the ability to come in for in-person. Obviously, those are very hands-on courses by nature, and so we wanted to give them an opportunity to participate in the hands-on in-person for those courses. Virtual modules will be utilized on remote learning days, so we do have curriculum that can be delivered through the virtual platform, even for our CTE programs. For the students who are in those Career Academy programs, and for those trades programs, although we are allowing for the in-person, they still have to have their own transportation. So we won't be running buses for those programs. And then students who select the 100% virtual option will not be allowed to choose certain CTE courses. Because as you can imagine, if you're in building trades or cosmetology, culinary arts, one of those types of programs, welding, the 100% virtual option would not be the best fit for that learning. And so what we'll be doing is working with those students to see what courses they want. And we have many CTE courses that don't fall into one of those categories, that 100% virtual might be a really good fit for the student for the learning in those courses. Okay, so we'll go ahead at this time and focus our questions on the grades 4 through 12 options and some of the other pieces that we sprinkled in as well to that section.
Okay, so before we ask our first question, one of the things I'm seeing online coming in, streaming as questions, I seem to see a pattern about Canvas and like where did Canvas come from and how did that get into the whole equation? Just to let people know, Canvas was purchased by the entire state of Virginia, so we are using that in Isle of Wight as well, and it's a very good system and it's a very easy system to use for the families and for our teachers.
One of the great parts of that is we have Canvas to deliver our curriculum, and as Dr. Thornton said, that's through Virginia Department of Education for all school divisions. But we also have our teachers, their Google Level 1 certification, which complements so nicely the work that we'll be doing virtually and within Canvas. So we really feel like our teachers have the resources they need and now also the skill set. So the question is, does Canvas come under Clever or is it different? And Dr. Kale, do you want to talk about the access to Canvas?
So Clever is a single sign-on, and so that's an option where students go and log in, and then they have direct access to other programs that we as a division give them access to. So they'll be able to access Canvas by going to Clever. When they log in to Clever, then they'll click to Canvas.
So a fifth grader who has special education services?
In an inclusive setting.
So if they're an inclusive student, they will Zoom when the teacher Zooms, but they will have additional special education services provided by the special education teacher outside of those Zoom times. So those are the students who are in the self-contained intensive support classrooms. They can attend on a hybrid model. Sure. Yes.
One of us is for the IEP students, so he's in, regular classes or whatever, but he's got stuff, so one of the things is, he has to get it in his IEP to get the things in print. How does a virtual student get the things in print? Are they gonna do like they did last year, drop off packets or pick up packets or whatever? He can't do some of this stuff that's online, but yet he's not so where he needs to be in an all-inclusive platform to the side. How does he get his papers? That's question number one.
All right, hold on. Let's answer that question. So the question is about a student, an elementary student, middle school student who receives special education services and has certain accommodations, and how are those accommodations going to be provided? We will be holding IEP meetings, and I'm looking at my SPED director right now. We will be holding IEP meetings to address how those accommodations are going to be delivered. So it's hard to answer lots of questions that are specifically related to your child because I don't know the specifics, but we will be holding IEP meetings to determine how are we going to deliver those accommodations for your child. And let me just ask Ms. Magner if she has anything else she wants to add.
No, I don't. At this point, what Ms. Getz said is correct. Those specific questions we will address at students' IEP meetings. There will be some accommodations that just don't work in virtual settings, but to me that one is likely a one that can, that we can work with in a virtual setting. So IEP teams will be amending IEPs as necessary and talking to parents about the accommodations currently on IEPs to figure out how they can work in virtual settings.
The question is, I've been really bad about this, I'm sorry. The question is, will those IEP meetings be held before school starts? The answer is,
We're working on it. We have a lot of students who have IEPs and 504s. Our teachers are going to be starting as soon as they get back. We have training for the first 2 days that they get back, actually it's the second 2 days that they come back, on how to really look at IEPs now in the virtual environment. Once that training's done, they'll be free to start having those meetings. So the hope is that we get those done prior to school starting. We might have some overlap into that first week or two of school, but we're really hoping to get it done sooner.
Okay, and then real quick, I'm very familiar with campus, college, we do a lot, I'm a current college student.
yes.
So, like when I'm going to college, I can log on to Canvas from several computers. Will I be able to log on, especially with my IT kit, will I be able to log on to his Canvas account, say from my computer, so I don't have to get onto his computer all the time? I can just sign in and look at that calendar y'all were talking about. Like, all right, well, this is what's due, you know, whatever. And maybe even virtually, like, be looking at that calendar on two separate screens with him. Is that an option?
So the question is, can you log on your device to your child's Canvas account, not necessarily on their device? And the answer to that is yes. Yes.
And you are correct, a lot of colleges utilize Canvas. It is very common, a very common platform. Anything else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Question over here.
So you said several times in the pre-K through 3 session that it was nearly impossible to do the virtual 100%. But that's the only option I have for my 4th grader, and I don't have high-speed internet. What are your suggestions?
Yeah, so if there is the possibility that during the day there is somewhere the child can be, that would be ideal, that has access to high-speed internet. If that's not possible, then the videos will be recorded, they will be available on Canvas, and you would have to do that at a later time, download the videos, and they would have to do the work. Again, there's not a live teacher, but you could reach out to the teacher with questions, with problems, and the teacher will respond to you.
Can I just add to that too, with those students that are remote and they are utilizing the videos via Canvas at a time that's not during that live stream, as far as attendance is concerned, we can through Canvas see when a child has viewed the video and to what extent they have been in there. So we are still able to take attendance for those students.
Yes, in the back. That's a good question. The question is, given the time that we've missed already, are we having a shift in our curriculum in order to accommodate for the learning that has been missed? And while this is a problem across the nation, the answer is yes. We are talking about that constantly. How do we look at that for those students? We will be looking at assessing students very early on, determining where they are, where we need to go. There'll be review of materials. We are very aware of where teachers made it in the curriculum, particularly in elementary that did not have that two-way, and middle. We are very aware of where teachers were able to get to in the curriculum and what was not covered extensively in the curriculum, and we have a plan for that moving forward. But it is a big challenge, you are correct. The option is, that's right, because the in-person continuum is remote, temporarily remote for the first 9 weeks. Hopefully, at the end of the first 9 weeks, we'll be in the situation where we can return, but right now, as much of the state of Virginia is in, we are temporarily remote.
So So I'd like to add to that. So there is still a choice. And we purposely did the temporary remote and our virtual learning, as you can see, is the same. Students are going to get the same. But if you choose temporarily remote, if in 9 weeks we're able to come back 4 through 8 or 4 through 12, then those students would come back. If you choose 100% virtual, you're not coming back for the whole first semester. So you still do have a choice. I know it's a gray area, it's hard to understand because you are getting the same services. Right.
So to ask that, so if in, let's say, 4 weeks, we decide to go in line with Virginia phases, can you decide to bring the kids back earlier than in that 9-week period? If you, without a 4 week?
No, because the school board voted to relook at it in 9 weeks. Now could I advise the school board and say everything's going really well in pre-K through 3? Our data from the local Virginia Health Department is staying straight lined. We're doing well. Can I ask them to call a special meeting to consider that? Yes. But once we get past that 9 weeks, and I do want to point out Ms. Carr is here, our board chair. Hey, Jackie. And so once that decision is made in 9 weeks, or if we feel like we need to come back sooner, at that point, all the decisions will be based on the local health and how we're doing within the school from that point forward. So that will be recommendations from myself, working with local health department and my team.
So I heard you say a couple times that teachers would, if we were to email a teacher, they would get back to us within 4 hours. I would assume, though, that if I email a teacher on my child's remote day at 5 o'clock or at 5:30, I'm not going to hear from that teacher until the next day. We have to, like, they're going to have, what would their office hours be?
So that's an excellent question. And the question is, what are the office hours for teachers in terms of responding to parent or student emails on those remote days? And they are the standard working hours for teachers. So for elementary, that's 8:30 to 4. For high school, that's 7:15 to 3 o'clock.
Okay, so my point was already in 4th grade, going into 4th grade, they were struggling in learning. And from what I saw out there, and I may be reading it wrong, I'm looking at 9 hours per day that are being hooked up to the internet.
Allow us to clarify.
So if you look on Monday, there are 4 blocks, and the blocks run 9 to 9:45, 10 to 10:45, and then there's a break, 1 to 1:45, and 2 to 2:45. That is when they are engaged in live Zooms each day. That would be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for a 4th grader. Yes, ma'am. Actually, that is the schedule, 4th through 12. Yep, that is the schedule.
So another question. I'm trying something, I don't know if it's going to work, to try to get some kind of coalition of parents in local areas to get together in a building somewhere that has internet. We do not have internet, nor am I going to pay $10,000 to get it to my house. Is there going to be some way that the school board can help these coalitions that are going to get together, or maybe just not, in trying to get internet to the building that we may be able to?
Do you want to take that?
I don't have the answer for it now, but it's something that we that live in the rural community is going to have to get.
Good evening. So we do have several plans depending on how funding plays out and how many groups such as yours do exist. One of them happens to be a filtered hotspot, in case you can get into an area that does have very good cellular coverage. We can put a filtered hotspot into that area, and it would be a protected means of internet communication for your children. The other option is a little more expensive, but we do also have what's known as non-line of sight point-to-point microwave transmission. And it's very technical, I know, but point being is if those were large enough areas and the funding were available for such an option, then I have about 6 options that I have ready to go as soon as we need them. So it's really about just buying the item and then getting it installed, which usually just takes a couple of weeks. The first place to start would probably be the Contact Us page on the Isle of Wight County website. You tried it all day? Lynn? Okay.
Question here, and then we can move on to the next.
So with the way that this, COVID stuff is working and whatnot, I know you said we have to commit for the entire year, but if we get into this and we decide that this is not, based on areas or whatever, we decide this is not the best route for my children because of whatever reason. Cases are climbing, but yet they might not be climbing high enough for you to close the school down, but yet they're climbing high enough for me to be uncomfortable. What does a parent do?
So the question is, the question is if you begin with option 1 and you become uncomfortable with sending your children to school, can you move then to option 2? And as much as we would love to be able to accommodate every parent whenever you decide, it's going to be really complicated, and it would have to be done if we had a case-by-case basis, there was a very extenuating circumstance, and quite honestly, we had room on the online learning platform that we could allow your children to move into online with another teacher. So the answer is that is going to be very difficult and probably unlikely.
Yeah, that is really due to staffing, and we just can't flip-flop staff back and forth, and numbers really drive that. And I think one of the biggest things for you to consider is if you're on that fence, you probably ought to go towards virtual if you're on that fence and you're really uneasy, because we can't make those accommodations. And I want parents and the community to keep in mind too, as school divisions throughout Virginia, we now have become an in-person school and a virtual school. We were never a virtual school. We are training staff in that type of learning, and so we are managing something now that we are not. These virtual schools did lots of research and became virtual schools, and that's all they do, and that's all they staff. So we do want your children to stay with us in Isle of Wight. We do feel like we can do a good job with our virtual learning, and it does have its kinks for the families who do not have that reliable internet. But it's just impossible to go back and forth with staffing.
All right.
Okay, so we'll move on from questions at this time. So transportation, just some specifics around what transportation will look like. So with our buses, drivers and students must wear a face covering when they're on the buses. We will have 1 student per seat, but that does not provide the 6 feet of social distancing. So thus the face coverings would be required. We can fit, and you can imagine our big buses, and I don't have the exact number, but it's approximately 70 students that you might fit on one of our large buses. We can get 26 students on one of those large buses in this configuration. So if there are a couple or multiple students from the same family, siblings, they would be able to sit together in a seat. Parents will be encouraged to transport their children. So we'll allow elementary and middle school parents to select one of 2 drop-off times to help accommodate the time that you might normally be departing for work or other reasons that you need a certain time. And then teachers may be required to report to work 15, 20 minutes earlier to accommodate early drop-off times. And so as far as staffing, we'll be working with our staff to figure out how to best accommodate those drop-off times. And then also here, parents will be required to opt in for transportation. So, and that will be part of the form that we're going to be sharing with you here in just a moment. You'll see where that opt in for transportation is located.
And Mike, if I can add, while we're on transportation, I met with our drivers last week and had an information meeting and question and concern meeting. And a lot of our drivers are over 65 years of age. They will be wearing masks the entire time. Students will be wearing masks the entire time. We will keep over a 6-foot buffer away from our drivers. And as you can imagine, they are concerned, but if we do it well and the students are passing by the drivers and they're not touching our students, we feel like it could be a safe environment for them. Their number one concern is, what are you going to do about these students who won't wear their masks, etc. Our transportation director and other individuals are going to ride buses throughout those first weeks to see what's going on, to help our children, especially our young ones, adapt to that. But I have told them I am going to support them. And if for any reason we are having difficulty with a student wearing a mask, we are calling home and we are not giving you 17 warnings. We are going to tell you we're no longer transporting you. We have to take safety first. And if you want schools to remain open and safe, then we have to follow the mitigations and take it very seriously. And the same within the classrooms. If we have those are behaviors, and I know they're small kids, but we're training them, and we need the cooperation of parents as well. And we cannot have multiple warnings over and over again because we're in a different time period.
Okay, so you've gotten a lot of information, and we need information from you. So in order for us to dictate what staffing is going to look like and how many virtual classrooms we have and virtual teachers we have, we need to know whether you are choosing for each of your children. So I need you to submit this form for every child you have. So you said you had twins. I need you to submit it twice, one for each of them. And all 3 of them then, thank you. So I'm going to click, I got up here so I could click this link here, hopefully. And so this is what the form looks like. It's very simple. You'll go through it, you'll answer the questions, you'll provide us information like your email address, your student's name, what grade they're in, what school they attend, if you want transportation or not. But most importantly, you're going to tell us if you are selecting option 1, that means you are on the in-person continuum. So when we come back, that your child is coming back with us. Or option 2, meaning that your child is going to be 100% virtual for the entire first semester. Now bear in mind, option 1 is a year-long selection. Option 2 is a semester virtual selection, okay? So this form came to your email tonight. We have paper copies here if you have poor internet and just need to fill it out on paper. Copies will be available at your child's school. They will be available at central office. It will be on our website. It will be on our division Facebook page. So there are lots and lots and lots of ways to access this. You have until Thursday, August 13th at 11:59 p.m. to make your selection. Any student that we do not receive a selection for will automatically be placed by default on the in-person continuum. Okay, so if you don't submit your form, you will be on the in-person continuum. And last but not least, if you do take the paper copy and you fill it out at home, please make sure you turn it back in at your child's school. Okay? Any questions about the enrollment?
So I have two going into kindergarten, one who is already enrolled, one who is not, because one was in the pre-K program last year, one didn't make the pre-K program last year and was involved in an outside program.
Okay.
So since he is not already enrolled, there's not going to be a way for me to gather all of his things, most likely, and have it all done before Thursday. I do still work. So what do we do, what does someone like me or anybody else do in that situation?
So the question is, what do you do to submit the information for a student who's not yet enrolled? And so, one, if you know that you're going to enroll, I would encourage you to go ahead and submit the form. There's no requirement that you have a certain email address or anything like that to get into it. So I would encourage you to go ahead and submit that form, and then once your child is enrolled, we'll be able to place them in a course.
Okay, so the question is about before-school care, about the YMCA. You've traditionally used their before-school care, and with your work schedule, you need to know when you would be able to drop off, and you don't know whether to opt in or out of transportation. So Dr. Thornton's going to answer that.
So we are currently working with the Y, and I know you said specifically you're not looking for the child care, but we're looking at a variety of options. We're also looking at some options that our staff can do very early in the morning to take on students as well as the Y. And we are actually meeting tomorrow to kind of solidify those plans. So we will get that out, and we'll do a blast or an announcement and get that out. So you're not going to have to do the full thing. But I do want parents to know through the Y, they have been working with us, and there are going to be some options on those alternate days and the Fridays for you to bring your children in to the schools that they actually attend in the cafeteria, and it will be through their Y Cdc guidelines, and so that will be an option. And we are also looking for some options for our teaching staff and our staff members as well.
Is there going to be a selection process for parents that opt in for transportation? I mean, what if we have, there's 26 children per bus, what if there's an influx of parents that opt in and my child only needs after-school delivery? Are they going to go because there's not enough room in the bus? Or how do y'all plan to plan that out?
So the question is about transportation. If the parent opts in for transportation, will we be able to provide that if a parent needs it? The question, if a parent opts in for transportation, will we definitely be able to provide that transportation? Depending on the number, she's asking, would her child get bumped because we didn't have enough space or enough drivers?
So initially, opening pre-K through 3, we should have plenty of drivers, and with an A-B model, you're not going to have all of the students from that bus stop traditionally there. And so we feel like we can accommodate it. As we move forward and open other buildings, we may have some concerns in that area, and we will address those as they come. I'm sure you're aware, if you've heard through the last few years, we talk about it at school board meetings, all over the state of Virginia is a major shortage of bus drivers. Just running our buses normally is a big problem. So it is a major concern and a great question, and we are going to try to do the best we can to maintain that.
Yes. High schoolers are totally virtual right now, as are middle schoolers and 4th and 5th. At the end of the first 9 weeks, we will review and the board will make the decision whether to continue as is or to add children in.
And if you select option 1 and we reopen at that 9-week time, you're on the in-person continuum, then yes, your child would come back. If you selected option 2, your child would remain virtual. Yes.
They are virtual.
The in-person continuum is remote.
Yes, 4 through 12 is remote right now. Yes, correct. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I hope I didn't confuse myself by that. When you all make a decision in 9 weeks, is that going to be for all of the 4 through K? Or is that only going to be through 4 through middle school and high school still remain virtual? Did I miss something with your thing? I don't think I'm going to.
So the board will decide who comes back at that point in 9 weeks. They may opt for 4 through 8. They may say 4 through 12. It will be up to them at that point. I will be making a recommendation, and they will receive a lot of data, health data, how the mitigations are working in each school, and we'll make the decision at that point.
So we know we're receiving a lot of questions online. We are going to be working to provide answers through our FAQ document that we will post on Wednesday. Mr. Lombardo, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think just it's really important, some of the terminology we're using around temporarily remote and virtual, 100% virtual. So I think it's also real important to reiterate to the group here and those of you who are tuning in on the live stream that, again, option 1 is the in-person continuum. And for grades 4 through 12 right now, they will be starting on the temporarily remote, and the board will be reassessing that at the 9-week period. So by choosing option 1, you're on the in-person continuum, which means, yes, grades 4 through 12, you're starting temporarily remote. You could then, at the 9-week period, move to a hybrid AB. You could move to another form of in-person, right through to what we think of as traditional days of school. Remember that if you're choosing option 2, you are choosing 100% virtual learning for the semester. And if you remember, the gentleman asked the question earlier about that and said, please explain that a little further. So we just want to make sure, again, that language on option 1 and 2 is clear. And we know it's a little confusing only because grades 4 through 12, even on the in-person continuum right now, would be starting in that temporary remote mode. So I hope that helps, or if Dr. Thornton or anybody else wanted to add, but certainly want to clarify that because we've been kind of using those terms and we understand that could be a little confusing at this point.
So the question is 4 through 12, even though the option right now is temporarily remote, 4 through 12 still need to select option 1 or option 2. Again, option 1, if we are able to come back, you will be allowed to come back in person. When you select option 2, you are not coming back to school, even if we open up. So we need all parents to make a selection of 1 or 2. I know it's a lot. It truly is a lot, and we understand, we do.
So Susan, if you just remind them again how we'll be getting information out, because we know there may be still some questions that filtered through the stream. Maybe even some of you leave here and wonder about some of the questions others asked. Susan, if you just remind them how we're going to get that out there to them quickly.
Sure. So we do have questions that have been streaming in constantly all night. We will be answering those questions. We will post them on our website. Look for the FAQ parent document. If you have questions after this, there is a Contact Us button on our website. I know it's not working for you, sir, but a lot of people have been submitting through that button. So please contact us through that. If that doesn't work, then I'm sure there's another email. I'm on there, Mr. Lombardo. Feel free to reach out to any of us. The next step is you are making the selection, and that needs to be done by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. If you have internet access, this form, the form that was up there, will be going out to you via email. You can use email, you can make the selection online. If you do not have internet, we have forms available for you tonight. You can make your selection, you can leave them with us, you can drop them off at your child's school, and we will enter your selection in. But if you have internet, feel free, you can do it online. You don't need to stay and get a form. If there aren't any more questions, I think we are good to close the evening. Thank you for your attention for this very heavy topic. We appreciate it.